from all these drugs and apologies. Handcuffed ain't enough on me, and I run an endless losing streak. What time does the 12:30 meeting start?
12:35.
Yeah, apparently it's 12:35 today. Welcome to the Sunday afternoon Handcuffed Ain't Enough meeting of 12-Step Recovery. My name is Jay Dow, and I'm an alcoholic drug addict. This is a recorded speaker meeting for jail and prison inmate tablets to carry the message of recovery to incarcerated inmates. The only people being recorded will be the speakers. This is a panel meeting followed by a 30-minute discussion. Our goal is to answer audience questions about being in recovery in prison or being in recovery on the streets. We ask that any questions asked today stick to the main topic of recovery. We are glad you are all here, especially the newcomer. We use the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to recover from alcoholic drug addiction, and we go through the 12 steps with a sponsor. Please be respectful of our speakers. They are here as our guests, and they are here as free volunteers. So Josh is going to read the topic for today.
My name's Josh, alcoholic addict.
Yeah, you are.
January 7th. Myths can sometimes express philosophical ideas that more exact language can never get across. Mythological language is infinitely suggestive. Alan Watts, 1915 and 1973. Poets, songwriters, filmmakers, painters, and pop stars use mythological archetypes like good, God, parentheses God, versus evil, parentheses devil. Egyptian, Greek, Norse, Eastern, and Aboriginal parables are full of great stories. Artistic interpretations of these stories neither mock nor advocate religion. Mythology, religion, and cultural customs anecdotally tell and preserve our narratives. Those of us with theistic or religious convictions are well served by keeping 12-step discussion about higher powers at an anecdotal level. Atheists can stand up for what they believe in without being evangelical too. Differing experiences need not be barrier building. Who can take issue with us if we maintain humble ambivalence toward our dearest beliefs? If we want our communication to be inoffensive, we avoid absolute or rigid language. An atheist that zealously reacts to a religious parable by offering proof of the non-existence of an omnipotent being misses the life lesson of the story. Conversely, the religious zealot who discounts the spiritual contribution of the non-believer is suffering the same hardening of the attitudes that builds unnecessary barriers. There is a time for intellectual stubbornness and a time to rise above it. Do we look for fault like there's a reward for it? Who made us the truth police? Art can answer questions that academia cannot, and vice versa. We can be grounded in reality and have active imaginations. One isn't superior to the other. Contempt makes our world smaller. Tolerance is a good start, but we strive for appreciation of others. A childlike curiosity about art, philosophy, religion, or history opens our minds. I don't need to believe in Cain and Abel or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to let their stories tell me more about myself and my world. Can I find value in science, faith, and mythology as guideposts to a rich and full life? That's it.
That's a motherfucker.
Yeah.
What does anecdotal mean?
Anecdotal?
Yeah.
Like the truth behind the story. Like I'm Josh, alcoholic addict.
Josh.
I was very I wouldn't even say anti-Christian, but I would just be like, nah, like, I don't want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just, whatever. Like, I don't know. God is, God isn't. I don't fucking know. Probably there's something. This is the way I believed, but I don't know. There's no proof to me either way. I used to be resistant to, after a meeting, saying the Lord's Prayer. I wouldn't say it. And I would attach my ego to other people that were like that would say, "Oh, the Lord's Prayer is not said in the big book." When I first got in recovery, it took me a minute to pick a sponsor because probably there was only a handful of dudes on the yard I was on that could sponsor. Most of them were Christian. There was one dude though that was an atheist, but he was on the fire crew and he lived on another yard. And another dude who was kind of like, he had explored Buddhism. He had got like the Buddhist fucking tray, his diet, but he just kind of said he was Buddhist to get the diet. But he was exploring other spiritual like directions, and that's kind of what I kind of connected to that. Right, I related to that shit. So I didn't really have a set fucking view of God when I came in to recovery. And, you know, we get to steps 2 and 3 and it's already mentioning God. And I'd hear some people say, well, you know, you got to do steps 2 and 3 to fucking do the rest. You know, they're in order for a reason. But my sponsor told me, let's just do our best. We'll start fucking with the building a conception. But step 3 can be, I'll turn my thoughts and actions, will and life, thoughts and actions, over to the rest of these steps. And believe in that. And if you've gotten this far already, you know, hopefully you can believe in that. I believed in energy, like positive and negative. I believed that fucking I had led a fucking negative enough life to put me in prison for a decade, to fucking lose my little brother of addiction. My family didn't trust me and really want me around. When I'd get out of prison, I couldn't hold a job, fucking get a place to live. You know, I would go right back to stealing, boosting Home Depots, cracking cars, jigglers, and fucking, you know, trying to get $10 to get a paper, you know. So I had some experience in dishonesty and manipulation and fucking self-will, I guess you'd say, right? So it talks about in the big book that we needed to find a power greater than ourselves to turn our will and our life over to. My thoughts and actions, good orderly direction works for me. I started, not at first, mind you, I didn't do everything my sponsor told me to do, and I would relapse. I'd get 30 days, I'd relapse, I'd get 45, I'd relapse. The last time I relapsed, I was gonna get a 60-day chip. Nobody knew I relapsed. I was gonna get it anyway. Fucking, we do a chip meeting once a month, and it started really bothering me. So I finally told him before the meeting that I had taken some fucking Suboxone. Just the experience of telling him was like a weight off my shoulders. So then this spiritual principle of honesty started being more of a viable higher power, right? So energy, positive and negative. If I can follow these fucking directions enough that my life starts getting better, that I start feeling better, I'm putting out positive energy, I get that shit back, that can be a higher power. And that's what I started with. As I went on, it started transitioning into something else. But we'll go back to where I'm still resistant to the Lord's Prayer after meetings, right? So I had to figure out 2 of the meetings on the yard, they'd say the Lord's Prayer at the end. And I knew I was just being resistant to that shit because it was Christian, and I knew that that's my ego. It's my ego. By this time, I had identified that fucking most of my resistance comes from pride and ego. And that's part of my disease, not part of the character I'm trying to build. So I figured, well, if I'm not going to say the prayer, at least maybe I can close my eyes and meditate during the prayer and try to feel the energy flowing around the room. positive energy. We're saying a prayer, we're closing down a meeting. The meetings always make me feel good. Let's just try that. And then when it would come to the part where it said, deliver us from evil, I would say, deliver us from ego, because my ego is what had made me resistant to this fucking prayer, and it's what made me resistant to Christianity. Eventually, I got to the point where it's like, I started believing that really ego is what makes us separate ourselves from each other. So if there's a million holes in this ceiling, and there's a beam of light coming through each hole in the ceiling, and each beam of light represents a different spiritual path or a different religious take, or just that anybody's belief in a higher power, the spiritual journey they're on, representation of that beam of light. The beam of light, I only see my beam of light, but it all goes to the same source, which would be the sun above the fucking ceiling, right? So I started trying to not detach from these spiritual paths that are other people's. And then, eventually, I've read the Bible. I was in Alhambra for 52 days one time. One of my times going back on a parole violation. All we had to read was those Jehovah's Witness little fucking, pamphlets and the Bible. So I read it, and I remember reading it and identifying with a lot of the shit in the Bible. Most of the Bible is written in parable and metaphor. That's what it's talking about in this reading right here. The story behind it. Like, I don't have to believe that Jesus fucking walked on water, or that some bitch ate an apple and shit because a snake told her to. Fucking, and that's wrong. Like, that can't happen. That's not. But it's all in parable and metaphor anyway. There's the story behind the parable and metaphor that counts. That's the spirituality of the Bible. That's the spirituality of the Quran, the Torah, fucking the Zen archery. All these readings are really to get you to a place of love as opposed to fear, which is what the steps are doing. Really, that's what it is. The higher power for me today is consciousness, elevated a little higher than fucking my peon ego fucking tells me or thinks. I believe in Jesus today. I believe in Muhammad today. All these people that walked the face of the earth to me were just beings of a higher consciousness. Higher consciousness being God. I believe Jesus was the Son of God today, but I believe so are all of you. All of you. Me, Jay, everybody here. Right? And it says that in the Bible. The Bible preaches love. The Torah, the Quran, they all preach love, dude. So maybe that's the higher power. But I don't really have to understand it either, because I overanalyze and overcomplicate shit. Right? Eventually, working the steps and working a program started giving me an experience. And that's something I can fucking truly believe in. 100%. So it becomes a conception, starts moving into a belief, then ends up in experience. That's evidence and proof. That's something I can get under. When I get a sponsee, I start taking someone through the steps. I try not to complicate the shit. I try not to walk him through the way I view God, or the way I even got to view God, because that part of your journey of recovery is going to be your own. Right? That's going to be your individual journey is going to be dictated by the actions you're putting into recovery and the steps, and it's going to end up either shit or fucking good. It's going to end up fear or love. You know what I mean? And that's not up to me how that shit ends up. Today I take responsibility for my recovery, so I take the responsibility to be there for the motherfucker that's asking for help, and that's on me. What you do with that is on you. But I know this, dude. I'd rather fucking be in here than out there. I'd rather have a place to stay. I'd rather not go to prison. I'd rather my family wants me around. I'd rather my friends can depend on me. And fucking seeking God is what gave that to me. Seeking. I still don't really understand God. My conceptions, they fluctuate from day to day. My understanding today might be a little different than my understanding tomorrow, but that shit doesn't matter. What matters to me is that I still seek that shit. I still seek God. I still seek love. I still stay aware of fear. I still stay aware of ego. Working the steps is what's given me all that shit. My goal today is to try to carry the message as effectively as possible. That's it. So thank you guys for letting me share.
Jay Dow, drug addict.
Jay.
I usually don't read these. I just show up on Sunday and just whatever, wing whatever the reading is. But I had a friend that's sober 8 months, and she was going to come speak at this meeting. And she hit me up yesterday, and she's like, I don't know, like, I can't find a fucking topic in this thing, you know. And I was like, you know, don't sweat it. Like, I usually have Josh or whoever else is up here read these things because I'm I can read, but I'm an audio guy. Like, I learn by hearing shit. And so when he reads this, I mean, a lot more of it even made way more sense. And I read this thing a couple of times yesterday. And just listening to Josh read it summed up about half of it that I wasn't following. And I know that about myself. My wife told me, I didn't know this before my wife told me, but there's 3 ways human beings learn: by audio, by hearing, by tactile, by touching and doing, and number 3, by reading, visual. And my wife's a visual learner, and I'm an audio and tactile. Like, I need to do something to to be able to figure it out and hear shit. And so I know that about myself. And that is 99.9% of this program. Like what Josh was talking about is watching for my resistance to things that are good for me. I have a high fucking resistance to anything that's good for me. Like, I'm not struggling with alcohol and drugs today. I'm struggling with a spoon, but keeping it out of my mouth, not fucking under a flame or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I eat fucking food, and I don't want to be fucking fat. And I run around with all these prison fucking guys that are in great shape, and I'm the fattest guy in the group, and I don't want to be the fattest guy in the group. So I've been working out for a fucking year and a half and making some gains, but still not in fucking great shape. And so this whole thing is about awareness, and what I've found, I'm sober 11 years, and what I've found is the disease jumps. I'm addicted to fear. That fear is my drug of choice. Guilt, shame, remorse creates fear in me. And so I find guilt, shame, remorse at 11 years of sobriety and body image. Not to where I got to go to fucking Overeaters Anonymous meetings, which I've been to in the past, but like I've been living this way long enough to. This is what this book says is a design for living that works. That's why you don't have to believe in God to get this fucking program. Step 2 doesn't say anything about God. I relapsed for 5 years, I thought, because I didn't believe in God. But I relapsed for 5 years for the same reason why anybody fucking comes in here and relapses for any amount of time. I would not do every fucking thing my sponsor told me to do.
Yeah.
Like, this book says, half measures avail us what? Nothing. Half measures avail us nothing. Half measures don't even fucking avail us half in this program.
Yeah.
And so 99.9% of this program in the beginning is getting a sponsor and doing what the guy tells me to do. And what's going on with sponsor and sponsee is every fucking sponsor, like, we're sponsors. We're sponsees, but we're also sponsors. We sponsor dudes. That's what keeps us sober. This is a 12-step program. And what's going on with, like, the dudes that I'm sponsoring, I am battling the disease in them. I don't have the full capacity to battle it in myself. What I do have is tools to keep it at bay and get fucking pissed off and not lash out at people when I want to. say fuck you internally, but the words that come out of my mouth, how can I help you? Like all these little tricks that this is designed for living that works.
Yeah.
And what this program does, I'm not addicted to alcohol and drugs, I'm addicted to fear. And when I get on my drug of choice, which is fear, at 11 years sober, I have this program to get back into peace. And so, living sober with this program, because I suck at abstinence. And what we're dealing in recovery is sober dope. This isn't about quitting alcohol and drugs. This is about changing highs. And we're dealing sober dope around here. And the dope that we're fronting is the truth. And the truth about you is there's not a fucking thing wrong with you. This book says we will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. Nothing's happened in our lives by mistake. These are promises that he and I are living with. He did 10 fucking years in prison. And what he knows, because of his in sponsoring guys, is the same thing the motherfuckers that wrote this book know, and what I know for not going to my stepmother's funeral in a month sober. Like, these are the worst things that happened in our lives, but they're not mistakes, because he sponsors fucking drug addicts who get loaded and do years of prison time. He knows that experience. I sponsor, almost everybody I sponsor don't go to their mom's funeral or their dad's funeral or their kid's funeral, because I didn't go to fucking funerals. So we all come to recovery with an assignment. That has nothing to do with alcohol and drugs. We all come here with an assignment. In early recovery, where y'all are living at, it often seems like we have shitty assignments. Losing children to addiction seems like a shitty fucking assignment. But that shit will start making sense when you're sponsoring a man who's dying in drug addiction because he thinks he's a piece of shit father because he lost custody of his kids to addiction. Mm-hmm. Same with me. There's no fucking paragraph in this book when I didn't go to my stepmom's funeral. She was my mom for 32 years. I was a month sober, trying not to go to prison. That's why I was in rehab, trying to get the certificate. But when my stepmother died and I didn't go to her funeral, I couldn't just turn to some page like 381, read some shit in this book, and then go, oh, hey, thanks, Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I don't feel like a fucking piece of shit son for not going to her funeral. There's no paragraph in here that's going to heal that kind of guilt, shame, remorse. The way I got the healing that I've needed is by sponsoring men who don't go to their fucking mom's funeral, or dad or kids, or didn't go to funerals, right? All my sponsees didn't go to funerals because they were locked up, jail or prison, or show up to funerals loaded, or too fucking high to go to funerals. I understand. I get that experience. And so that's the assignment that I brought here. I moved back in here a week off of not going to her funeral. And I was carrying so much fucking guilt, shame, remorse. I can look back at it now and I'm amazed I didn't get loaded over that guilt, shame, remorse. But, fucking recovery and Crossroads forgave me for that. Because the last time I moved in here and the last time I got into recovery, basically what recovery said to me at the door is, Jay Dow, so glad you're back, man. I'm so sorry to hear that you didn't go to your stepmom's funeral last week. If you'd like to make that right, have a seat, shut your fucking mouth, and we'll show you how to heal that pain. That's what recovery said to me the last time I moved in here. And that's what recovery's saying to everybody that's in this fucking room. The worst thing that's happened to you will become your strongest asset. And so it's like, that's why we got to get a sponsor, because this book is basically talking to us about shit that we don't have a fucking clue about, which is living a sober, successful life. I thought I had a lot of success before my life fell apart. I owned recording studios. I played with a bunch of famous people in music, and then I got into real estate at 30 years old. I was selling land. I had investment properties. I had condos. Fucking making money, and then when I bottomed out and started moving in and out of Crossroads and ghetto ass fucking sober livings, I started to think after a few years of living in the gutter, like, oh, maybe I am afraid of success. I mean, I had a little taste of it, but not the success that I really wanted. I couldn't sustain it. I thought I was afraid of success, but the truth is I didn't have a fucking clue what success looked like. Had no clue what it was. I thought it was like, go make a bunch of fucking money. Yeah. But it's not. It's about getting a fucking sponsor. What's a sponsor? Sponsor's a hardcore loser who's winning in every area of his life. We are great sponsors because we are fucking zeros without this program. We're hardcore losers who are winning in every area of my life. Josh is fucking doing the electrical of one of my houses. Like, we have a couple houses. And he's over there with Steve, and they're fucking, my wife's doing it all because she's own a federal construction company and shit. And so, like, he's been over there a few times, like, wiring the electric in our fucking house. Like, the most fucking dangerous fucking piece of the whole property. Right? Him. And I mean, I trust him, but my wife, she's not a fucking drug addict. But my wife trusts him to wire the electric in our house. Because, like he said, like, we show up, man. Without recovery, I'm a shitty fucking friend. I don't show up. You can't fucking count on me for nothing except to drop the ball and cancel. And so that's why I love recovery. But like, it's why it's so fucking impossible to get drug addicts sober, well, and thriving, or just to get a guy who comes in here and hears the same fucking story from every guy that's in the front of the room. Yeah. Every sober man who comes in here is sober and successful. If you get sober, you will become successful. We have promises. All the promises will come true. And it's not that you're going to fucking get sober and be a multimillionaire. You'll get sober and experience the promise of losing fear of financial insecurity, which is much better than being a multimillionaire. Yeah. Because, well, that's a different story. But, and so we get to, like Josh talks a lot about too, which I love, we get to programs like this for free. Everyone's living here for free. Nobody's fucking paying for this. But we come in here thinking it's a punishment, thinking it's a fucking joke. Anyways, I always did. Thinking it's a bunch of fucking lames up here fucking talking about their fucking shit and who gives a fuck, was my attitude. Like, fuck you guys. But to get to Crossroads, to be in your seat, you have to be a fucking genius. You have to be highly fucking intelligent to have made it to this room, to this moment in this room. You've survived drug addiction, you've survived prison, you've survived the streets, you've survived the fucking guilt, shame, remorse that you're still carrying, that you haven't healed. You've survived these fucking secrets that you're still carrying that nobody knows about. You gotta be a fucking badass to be a fucking drug addict and to have made it to this moment. But you have to be 10 times fucking tougher to walk up to a man you don't even fucking know, sober drug addict, and go, will you be my sponsor, bro? Yeah. Will you show me how to put together a fucking kick-ass life like all you fools are always talking about? And he'll go, yeah. Do this, do that, do this, do that. And then all you do is go, okay, and then go do it. There's an old saying, birds of a feather what?
Flock together.
Birds of a feather flock together. What that really means is same hang with same. I relapsed for 5 years in this program with the same sponsor, and fucking my life was a complete fucking shit show. And then I didn't go to my stepmom's funeral, and I did a eulogy for her in drug rehab at a month sober, and I experienced the truth about myself at a month sober. And turns out I'm not a piece of shit drug addict homeless son who didn't go to his stepmom's funeral. I am a sober, loving, caring son. And I did the eulogy, and I experienced that truth. And that was my starting point. And so, like he said earlier as well, like talking about seeking. You don't have to believe in God. This is about seeking. I find what I seek. And when I got sober, my sponsor told me that. He's like, Jay, you find what you seek. All the time. Everyone's looking and finding what they really want. And what my sponsor said is, Jay, you are seeking pain. Because you find it every fucking where you go, bro. And that shit ain't working for you. And I couldn't argue with that. But I haven't been seeking pain for 11 years because this program got a hold of me and fucking pulled me out of delusion. That's really all this program does, is it takes a motherfucker who's in delusion and walks him up 12 steps to reality. And the problem with being in delusion is I had no fucking clue I was in delusion until I walked up these 12 steps and I was out of delusion, and then I could look back down the stairs and go, oh, fuck, I've been in delusion, man. Sorry about that, everybody. That's what's going on in this program. And that's why, like, people aren't, like, even when I lived here the last time, I wasn't living here going, oh, yeah, I'm back at fucking Crossroads for the zillionth time in 5 years. But I started taking action and doing the shit that the same man had been telling me to do for 5 fucking years. And I, this time back in, I just said okay and did everything he told me to do. And shit came together quick. And so birds of a feather flock together. Same hang was same when I started doing the things my sponsor told me to do. Again, my sponsor's a hardcore loser who's winning in every area of his life. But when I started doing the things he told me to do, I mean, yeah, you do step work out of this thing, but there's a whole fucking way more shit goes on with a sponsor than doing step work. But I started doing these exercises. I do these steps. Every time I do a step, I get a little closer to the truth. Step 12 is the truth. Step 12 is reality. Step 12 is my God. My God's reality. I believe in reality. My faith is awareness. And so, like, I do step 1 and I take 1 step out of delusion and 1 step into reality. Step 2, I got 2 steps out of delusion, 2 steps closer to reality. Step 12, I hit step 12 and I experience the truth about myself. I come up out of delusion into reality and I experience the truth about myself. And the truth about me is there's not a fucking thing wrong with me. That's what a spiritual awakening is. And when you have a spiritual awakening, stone cold sober, in this program, you will have this experience. I'm good. Don't need nothing. That's what power feels like. That's the fucking brilliance of step 2. That's what I believe in. That when I got here, I believed in that experience. Crystal meth taught me that, but unfortunately meth lied to me. Crystal meth told me I was good. I was far fucking from it. And so that's what we offer in this program. We offer the truth. The truth is there's nothing wrong with you, and your whole life of being a fuck up has prepared you to help fuck-ups rebuild a kick-ass life. Because the truth is there are no fuck-ups on this planet. There are only amazing, sober, loving, caring men who unconsciously believe that they are not that. Like, I don't know anything about the Bible. I know 2 quotes out of the Bible. One of the quotes out of the Bible is, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And the truth about you is there's not a fucking thing wrong with you. And the other quote I know from the Bible is, pick up your mat and walk. Pick up your bed and walk. You are healed. There's nothing wrong with you. And this book says, see where religious people are right and make use of what they offer. Yeah. So I don't have to fucking argue to people about my God, your God, or any other thing. I see where you're right. If it makes sense to me, I take it. If I don't, I leave it. But what I don't do is argue with people about fucking God, religion, or anything. Yeah. I'm not here to convince nobody of nothing. So anyways, I'll pass.
Thanks, Jay. Hell yeah. In 2012, I went to Maury in Buckeye, and when I was going, I had never been to a 4-yard, and they told me your score's being bumped up, and you're going to a 4-yard, and then the dude's running the yard. He told me later, yeah, we saw the list. You're going to Maury, and I'm like, fuck, man, I'm not really a Maury type of motherfucker. Like, I like to talk shit and have fun, and this place is called Murder Maury. It's kind of notorious, but I went to Maury, and my mom sent me The Secret, that book, The Secret, right? And I remember it like having a profound impact on my life. Like, I didn't know it at the time, but I've always been searching for God. Like, how many people in here want to know what God is, who God is, like some kind of relationship with God? I think it says in the book, deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Fundamental means the simple idea of God, which to me is still love. But like Jay Dow was talking about, you know, I don't argue anybody's religion. Like, here's what I believe in today. I believe in spiritual principle. I believe that's God. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Now, any Christian, any Buddhist, any Muslim, any religion will tell you God wants you to be honest, open-minded, and willing. Like, wants you to be a person of love and you know, help your fellow man. So in essence, your God is my God, right? It's all the same thing. That's what I believe today. When I did the parable of the beams of light, I'm very careful what I say when I'm talking about God. And I don't get super animated or passionate sounding behind it because I'm trying to be careful what I say, because I don't ever want to make anybody resistant. You know, when I get a new sponsee and I say, do you believe in God? And they go, yeah, I'm Christian. Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. I go, perfect. Fucking perfect. And you're already one step ahead of where I was when I started this shit, because I thought I needed a conception of God. You know, I'd been hearing I need a conception. So I formed the simplest conception I could at the time, and then eventually it transitioned into something else, an experience, something I feel today. And I can't deny the way I feel. So no matter what your God is, who your God is, how you view God, feel that shit. The steps, that's what the steps brought me to. Feeling that shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, even the word miracle makes me resistant.
Yeah.
But I don't know what other fucking word to use. Because I'm a fucking gutter bum. I'm like bottom of the barrel junkie. Mm-hmm. You know, I hang out at Jimmy Jack's and shit. Hoping somebody will fucking throw me a hot wing and shit while I'm waiting for my fucking dope. You know what I'm saying? Chuco knows. Fuck. Yeah. We've seen each other down there. But really, dude, the steps, dude, they're a miracle. They're of God. Like, I really can't explain it any other way. If you want to know God, if you want to know what that means to you, if you want some kind of relationship, some kind of understanding, if you want to feel that shit, there's a million motherfuckers on the planet right now today that will tell you that them steps is the way to do it. If the whole Cardinal Stadium is full of dudes fucking screaming, the steps brought me to God, like, who am I to deny that shit? Who am I to not believe them? You know? Unfortunately, you have to be at that point of desperation. But they end up calling that shit a gift for a reason, because that's what brought me to God. And, you know, and God can have a million definitions. I don't really have to define it or understand it. But if you want what the dudes sitting up here every week, all throughout the week have, and you got to find it. You got to seek it. And the promises have come to light for me 1,000 times over, way exceeding my expectations. And there's a million people fucking will tell you the same thing. That's all I got. Let's pass to someone else, man.
What did you say the definition of parable is?
I don't know if I said what the definition of it is, but it's like the meaning behind the story.
Oh yeah, the meaning behind the story. So I was atheist until I got through my stepmom's death, and when I didn't get loaded over her dying, I had this experience that I knew it wasn't me who got me through that. I don't know how else to explain it, but like, I kind of had a split at the point when, because if there was ever a day in my life I desperately needed to get drunk and high, it was the day my stepmom died, because the last thing I'd yelled at her a year before was "fuck you" at the airport when she kicked me out of her house. And I hadn't spoke, so the last thing I said to my stepmother alive was "fuck you" at the top of my lungs at the St. Louis, Missouri airport when her and my dad kicked me out of the house, and then I never saw or spoke to her again and then she died a year later. And so I started praying to her. I'd go into prayer like I was talking to her and my grandpa. That's how I started fucking praying. Like, without asking for shit. Like, I always treated, God like Santa Claus, like, oh God, I hope I get this job. Oh God, I hope she'll fucking come over tonight. Oh God, I hope the prosecutor dies on the way to court. Oh God, fucking, like, those were my prayers. And but when I started praying to my stepmom, I wasn't asking her for anything. I was just having an open, loving dialogue with her in prayer. And like, so what my prayers look like today is I just say thank you. Like, when I wake up, I open my eyes, I'm I know where I'm at. I'm in my house. I live indoors now. And like I close my eyes. I got my wife and my dog, and fucking I just start saying thank you. Like, and I don't pray every day. My life is a walking prayer. My actions speak way more. My actions speak much louder than my words. My life is a living prayer. We're in living amends up here, paying people back that we fucked over, that we didn't do direct amends to. But the parable thing that Josh is talking about, like I heard Joe McDonald say one time, when you see Jesus Christ with the crown around his head, what that represents is a crown of thorny thoughts. And when I heard that, man, it really opened me up to the Bible. Because before I was like, fuck the Bible and anybody that believes in it. But when Joe McDonald said that Jesus Christ with those thorns represents a crown of thorny thoughts, I completely fucking identified with that. The only difference between him and me is I don't have a bunch of blood running down my fucking head, but I got that fucking crown on. Because I got negative fucking thorny thoughts running in my mind all the time at 11 years sober. And what this program does is it helps me differentiate the true from the false. It's one of the first readings in this book where Dr. Silkworth's describing delusion. That's how every drug addict and alcoholic who fucking gets to places like this, we all get here in delusion. And what Silkworth describes delusion is, I can't differentiate the true from the false. And this program helps me do that. He's talking about delusion, which is the false, and reality, which is the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on in this program. When you experience the truth about yourself, that there's nothing wrong with you and there's been no mistakes in your life, and you fucking drop every piece of guilt, shame, and remorse, and you drop every piece of fear you've ever had, stone cold sober, you will, like our buddy Jason and Sarah says, you won't want to change the way you feel anymore. Which is a handy fucking trick for guys like us. That's why I've been sober 11 years, because I haven't been desperate in 11 years, and I haven't fucking run back to delusion so deep that I have to go fucking smoke meth and oleanders. So anyways, that's enough for me.
Thanks, man. Dave Chappelle has he tells a story that he says, when he was, a new comedian, he'd have this shitty ass car and he'd drive, he's from DC, so he'd drive to New York, to Baltimore, Philly, all these places to go do stand up. And he broke down in his car once and he was trying to flag somebody down, and nobody would fucking pull over to help him. But then when he started pushing his own car, all of a sudden people fucking started pulling over to help him. So it's people will help you when you want to help yourself. You know what I mean? That was a good story. That was a good story too. I heard from Dave Chappelle.